What's up guys, Ronnie here and welcome, and today I want to go over Batsby and Ninfoniel. Should you pull for them or should you not? I've pulled for both of them and I'm going to talk mainly from an RTA viability standpoint. I've been playing a lot of RTA the past month, been consistently within the top 20 players in the world in RTA, and I think I have a very good understanding of the meta. And first up, I want to go into Batsby and his issues, actually mainly in RTA as of now. So Batsby theoretically has one of the greatest overwhelming damage outputs in the game. If you think about the bruiser matchups, they sometimes take very long for someone to actually get a kill because the healers deal so much damage. And Batsby would be theoretically, only theoretically, be the one that would be able to overwhelm the opponent's healers by his raw amount of damage, because he does so much AoE damage consistently. Even if you look here, his damage is insane. That's a max stack Giada. You're not getting that fast, but the Batsby is going to be cycling that fast and is going to be able to get way more burst out than the Giada. So Batsby is going to go S3, S2, S1, S3, S2. And the S3 and S2 can be considered almost as one turn, as they are almost back to back, as he has a 80% turn meter push within these two. But here's the issue, guys. That is not the case for turn 2. But first up, let me go actually into the cleave specifically. Because he has so much AoE damage, can't you use him for a cleave? And the answer is not really. Because the problem with the cleave is the main cleave strat at the moment involves you resetting the S3 3-turn cooldown S3s from your cleavers, being Messiah or Yelly, and then just be able to deal that much damage from their S3s. Now the Yelly S3, for example, is way more damage than the Batsby, because Batsby wants to go S3, then S2. But because most of the cleavers have so much push and turn meter manipulation, for example, when they draft the Messiah S3 gets pushed up 100%, S3 again gets pushed up 100%, S3 again, you know, whereas Batsby needs S3, S2. That leaves him vulnerable to many things, especially because Messiah is invincible. Messiah is way better than Yelly as well in cleave, by the way. Messiah is invincible, so therefore he doesn't really care about counterattacks. On top of that, the Messiah also doesn't really care about Tiamat's passive or Viper's passive at all, as he just ignores them on top of that. Whereas Batsby doesn't ignore these passives. On top of that, he has 2 AoEs that he needs to get out before his damage really is seen, and therefore has 2 chances for your opponent to actually counterattack him or to disrupt him. Whereas the Messiah gives way less breathing room than the Batsby does. So that is about the Messiah here. So therefore in cleave, if your opponent sees the cleave coming, Batsby is hard to draft. But what about the turn 2 drafts, right? What about the turn 2 drafts? Well, he has a big issue there. And while he would be theoretically, like I said, able to overwhelm the healers in the turn 2 draft, which is very impressive, he has one big issue. And that is the big 3 DPS. The big 3. The big 3 is what you could call them for turn 2. And that is Holden, Rahu, and Tiamat. These are by far the best 3 bruisers, and Batsby does not have a very good matchup against any of those. Why is that the case? First up, against the Rahu, he has a weaker matchup because of the type disadvantage. And on top of that, the Rahu is one of the units that can extremely fast take out a single unit, especially a Batsby, even if he's on bloodbath. He can take him out very quickly. So that makes him vulnerable to a random Rahu dual attack or a random Rahu counter. Same can be said for the Tiamat, the random Tiamat counter. And the big thing about the Tiamat is, while he would have so much overwhelming damage that the Tiamat might be getting low from him and therefore not deal that much damage to him, you could think, okay, maybe he's good against the Tiamat. But the problem then is, more often than not, people draft Tiamat with a Mizuki. And the Mizuki, on the other hand, completely cripples him, because he can't really press his buttons the first 2 Mizuki turns. He can't really press his buttons Therefore, he's gonna die to the Tiamat or the Mizuki if he presses the button, because he just counterattacks guaranteed, plus heal block, and that's gonna spell doom for him. Then we have the Holden, and theoretically, if you look at this, he does insane damage to reason element units, to the red units. His damage is insane to red units, so he can very well, within a snap of a finger, obliterate the Holden. So why do I say his matchup is not that crazy into Holden? Well, if you're playing for a turn 2 draft, you have to consider a few things here. And that is, first up, the Holden is gonna be, at most of the times, very fast. There's many Holdens that are around 280 speed. I even played against one today that was over 300 speed. And more often than not, they're on a Shackle Guard with Bulwark. That's important to note there. And if they're not on a Shackle Guard and they're on an Artisan, they're on Strife. So therefore, if you don't have a crazy pusher in your team, Holden will go in front of Batsby. And if Holden goes in front of Batsby, Batsby gets crippled no matter what. Because Holden, first up, if your Batsby isn't on a Law of Silence or on a Bulwark, Holden is gonna rip his ass too, and your Batsby is out of the fight for 3 turns. Simple as that. If your Batsby is on Bulwark or Law of Silence, Holden is gonna rip S3, and your damage is significantly reduced, and he's gonna counter, and he's gonna death break you, and you're gonna die, very likely. And then the last option would only be against Holden to really ensure that your Batsby goes in front of the Holden. And the only real way to be able to make him go in front of the Holden would be a Tsukiyomi. Because also she gives him a big attack buff and she pushes him so far up that very likely he could still be able to use S2 into S3 and deal enough damage through that. But when you do this, you have to consider one thing there. And that is, if you have a Tsukiyomi, you push up your Batsby, and the Holden is on Bulwark, all of that bonus damage, right, all of that insane bonus damage that you could get from the debuffs is gone. And on top of that, if the Tsukiyomi push isn't enough for the Batsby to get his S2 out before the Holden goes, and the Holden goes in front of the S2 from the Batsby, Holden is just gonna reset the Batsby and he's out of the fight. Simple as that. So you would need to be able to ensure Batsby goes and takes both turns in front of the Holden. And on top of that, what you need to consider is, let's say you ban protect that Tsukiyomi. Let's say you ban protect that Tsukiyomi. Well, all of a sudden, you're already weaker in a turn 2 draft, because Tsukiyomi is not as strong in turn 2 drafts as, for example, a Lily or some of the other standard units for tempo. And then, if you pick the Tsukiyomi in a turn 2 draft ban protected and you pick the Batsby, your opponent can still just ban the Batsby. Then you would still need another DPS to be able to make use of the Tsukiyomi push and attack boost mainly. And therefore you would have another squishy DPS going very early and very likely. So let's say you have, for example, a Messiah. Well, a Messiah, without all the support from the cleave units, not going to be as oppressive as with all these cleave units, because a single ultimate from the Messiah with the attack boost is gonna get everyone very low, but not quite enough to kill. And if you don't have multiple supports for the Messiah, he's not going to be able to do enough. So what if you ban protect the Batsby? Well, if you ban protect the Batsby, your opponent can ban the Tsukiyomi. But what if you go for Tsukiyomi for plus Lily, for example? Well, the Lily doesn't push as far as the Tsuki, and on top of that, the Lily doesn't give him an attack boost. Same goes for the Freya. She doesn't push as far as the Lily as well. And on top of that, you kind of also would like to have a Heinrich in your team, because Heinrich empowers Batsby's damage by a significant margin. So as you can see, it's just super hard to draft him as of now. It's just super hard to draft him as of now, simply because the main counter, right? He's a hard counter to Reason elements. But the main bruiser that is picked, that is Reason, is Holden. And Holden just has so many tools. Holden just has too many tools. He has the counters, he has the death breaks, he has the attack break, he has the reset. Right? Just Holden just Holden doing Holden things. That said, once, for example, some other recent bruisers come into play, and not everyone is playing counter-attack units all of the time, like the Mizuki, like the Holden and so forth, then I could very likely see a resurgence of Batsby, or a more resurgence of aggro drafts with Batsby, where he has more potential, or if you have other units that support the Batsby a lot, right? For example, if Ninfoniel would have some push in her team, I think Batsby would be great, because then you can go Ninfoniel plus Tokyomi and the Batsby on 3. Then he would all of a sudden be able to do a lot of damage, most likely. But we're just not there at the moment. So in my opinion, he's obsolete in the current meta. You don't need him in the current meta. He's super good for PvE, and one copy can't hurt. That's what I'm saying. Because metas can change. He could, if counterattack units fall, he could all of a sudden rise. If there's some new supports that give some more push, that also give an attack buff, and especially there's also a lot of green units that are meta at the moment, right? Mizuki, Rahu, Fusho, Asanya. There's so many green units that are good. And then we have the Ninfoniel. Now the Ninfoniel has one issue as well, and that is mainly strippers like Holden. Holden. Because she would be able to do a lot of work for aggressive attack-based units. Because of her shield, she's going to be able to protect them. Because of her attack buffs, she's going to make them hit extremely hard. But Holden can strip all those things, so that's an issue for her. So for that to actually take effect, you would need your DPS to be fast enough, and you would need another pusher. And you would need to ban protect the pusher, or you would need to ban protect her. But then you need 2 pushers and 2 DPS. You get the gist. It's hard to draft her. That said, I think she could also see a resurgence depending on the meta. Especially because also the main bruisers that are in the game are all not attack based. You could have some Born usage maybe, but most people don't have the Latize to build a Born. That's a big issue as well. You don't really have Latize to build any units in this game. That's a big issue. So this is kind of a bit of a meta analysis for you guys in terms of these 2 units, where they stand in the current RTA meta, the issues they face in the current RTA meta. I think both of them have potential to be strong, but in the current meta they have some issues that they have to deal with. Now, even though all of these things speak against them in the current RTA meta, I would still pull both of them, simply because metas can change, right? And they have potential. That's not the issue. The meta just doesn't fit them at the moment. That's something very important to note. The meta doesn't fit them. But whether or not if you pull for them or not is all up to you. I just gave you a little bit of a briefing here in terms of their current strength. And I want to make this clear for you guys. Not that someone goes in the future and Batsby has a resurgence, for example, because the meta shifts. You said Batsby is weak. That's not what I said. I said Batsby in the current meta is not needed. So both of them have potential in the future, but none of them is a Holden, none of them is a Fusho. That's already all from my side. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe for some more. I'm Ronnie. I wish you a blessed day, and I'm out. Peace.